of our funding formula. Most people think that our public schools are funded through the lottery or through some magical method, but it's not. There's nothing magical about it. Approximately 66% of the funds for public schools come from the local communities. That ranks 50th out of all 50 states. So the state of Illinois contributes the smallest percentage to the funding of public schools of all 50 states. States like Idaho and Michigan and North Carolina, they all contribute more than 60%, with Michigan contributing approximately 69%. So the state of Michigan contributes 69% of the funds for its public schools. It comes from the state level. The state of Illinois contributes 27%. So for every dollar that goes to funding our public schools, the state of Illinois is essentially contributing a quarter. 66% of that is coming from us through property tax revenue. And then the federal government makes up roughly about 12%. So the reason why our property taxes are so high in the southern suburbs and other Black and brown communities throughout the state is because we don't have enough money in our communities. It is as simple as that. It's not your village mayor. It's not your village trustees. It's not Crook County, as it's oftentimes suggested. The reason why our property tax bills are as high as they are is because the state of Illinois is not contributing its fair share. Instead of them contributing 69% like Michigan, or 64% like North Carolina, or 62% like Idaho, or 60% like Louisiana, the state of Illinois is only contributing 27%. So what that means is that us as local taxpayers have to contribute 66%. Well, if you live in a community where the median household income is only $30-some thousand, we don't have enough wealth to pay for our public schools. And that's why our property taxes are so high. So a lot of people say, well, what amount should the state of Illinois be contributing? And I always love that question because we don't have to guess about what the Illinois legislature wanted for us to pay. So everyone now should see my screen. And on my screen, I just put up the Constitution of the state of Illinois. And our Constitution was adopted December 15th of 1970. I was born October 29th of 1981. So 11 years before I was even born, our state constitution was adopted and enacted. And according to our state constitution, the framers of our constitution said, this is what we think should be applicable for education. Article 10, which is education, it specifically says the following, and I'm going to supersize this so that everyone can see it as easily as possible. So in the very first section of Article 10 of our state constitution, Section 1, Paragraph 3, it states, the state has the primary responsibility for financing the system of public education. Does everyone see that part that I read from?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So if someone came to you and said, you have the primary responsibility to pay for something, what amount do you think you would have to pay for?
Zero.
If you have the primary responsibility, you have zero?
The state has the primary responsibility for financing the system of public education.
Exactly. So what percentage do you think the state should be paying?
100%.
Okay, I like that answer. I like that answer. What about you? What do you think?
They should be paying the 66%.
There you go. Instead of the 27.
Instead of the 27.
And then Okay, so I'm breaking up every now and again. So if I do break up, please just let me know and I'll repeat. Thank you
Mhm.
for Trustee Matts. And I see that Trustee Joe Woods has joined. Greatest of evenings to you, Trustee Joe Woods. What percentage do you think the state should be paying since they have the primary responsibility for financing the system of public education?
Trustee Woods, are you on mute?
No, it doesn't look like it, but that's okay. So what the law says is anytime that something is deemed to be a primary job duty, which is within the context of employment law, that means that it should be at least 50.0001% of the time that you're doing that job function. So employment law defines primary job duty or primary responsibility to mean 50.001%, which is very similar to election law. In order to get elected, you got to get 50.00, well, technically it's 50% plus one, but that translates to 50.0001%. So the state constitution says, hey, the state should be paying at least 50%. But right now, the state is only paying 27%. So they're barely paying half of what they should be paying. And that's the problem. Our problem is that the state right now is only contributing 27%. So what that means is that the money has to come from somewhere. And where that money comes from is from us as the local property taxpayers. And when it comes from us, we always don't have it. So for our guest, what city do you live in?
South Holland.
Oh, beautiful. So you are right around the corner from me. I'm right here in the plaza with the Relio's Pizza on 170.
Oh, okay.
So do you know what our property tax rate is here in South Holland?
No, I don't. What's you know, honey? My phone. I gotta charge my phone. Do you know what it is, dear?
No, but I can get a text.
He said he can get a tax bill.
Nope, don't put yourself out that
You said
far. So thankfully, yeah, don't put yourself out that far. So we're gonna take a look and see what the tax rate is for South Holland. And let me just control F it, make it easier. South Holland. All right, so for South Holland, I don't know why it only gave me one result, but our property tax rate is ugh,
Okay.
so, we are 19.469%. So essentially, we are taxed at a rate of 20% of whatever our property's value is. That's what our tax rate is every year, annually. Now, to put that into perspective, have you ever heard of a community called Hinsdale?
Yes.
What do you think their property tax rate is? So ours is 19. What do you think Hinsdale's is?
Theirs is probably around 15 or I know it's probably lower than ours.
All right, so 15%, but not too much lower is what we think, right?
Right.
That might be somewhat reasonable, even though it's not fair because we all have property and we're all paying for schools. So why should theirs be lower? But if it was 15, you'd be okay with that, right?
Well, not really, because I feel that it's, equitable. Everybody should be paying the same thing.
The same, exactly. I'm with you. But how would you feel if I told you that theirs was a 7.5%?
Oh, I feel that's unfair.
It's because it is unfair.
It is
That
unfair.
theirs is 7.5% and ours is 19. What if I told you that for a community such as Glenview, theirs is only 8.3%?
Oh, I would have the same feeling. It's no different.
Same feeling. And then what if I told you that the whole big old city of Chicago, the third largest city in the United States of America, its tax rate is 6.75%.
Oh my gosh. And they're always complaining about their taxes, right?
Always complaining that they are so taxed and that they get taxed out of their homes, when in reality, the city of Chicago actually has one of the lowest property tax rates in all of the United States of America, but definitely in all of Cook County. So according to the Cook County Clerk's Office, and every year they compile this report that tells us about our tax rates. Every year they do the math for us, and according to them, the highest tax rates in Cook County is Park Forest at a tax rate of 41.564%.
Park Forest 41 point. You write that down?
Riverdale has the second highest at 31.09%. And then Phoenix, tiny little Phoenix, which is right next door to us in South Holland, their tax rate is 29.95%.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with all those areas.
And then compare and contrast that, Burr Ridge has the lowest tax rate of suburbia at 7.2%. Hinsdale is 7.5%, and Lamont is 7.8%.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
Yes.
But I
And-
have, yeah, I know.
And this is what has existed for decades. And the reason why it's existed is because not enough people are aware of how our funding formula works. And when you get your tax bill and you see how high it is, who's the first person you want to blame?
We want to blame the governor.
Okay, fair enough. So
Then you want
typically
to
that-
then you want to blame your community.
there you go.
You want to blame
You
the
want-
community
You want to blame Don DeGraff.
supervisors and stuff.
There you go. You want to blame Don DeGraff as well as the board. And
Right.
then you want to blame the assessor. And then you want to blame Cook County.
Rogers. Okay, it's the assessor, right?
Nope. So our assessor is Fritz Kagi. So Fritz Kagi is the Cook County assessor, and Cassandra Holbert is the Thornton Township assessor.
Cassandra. Who? That's
So
the. Okay. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
we want to blame all of these local elected officials because we think that they are the reason why our taxes are so high.
Mhm.
But the number one reason why your taxes are so high is because the state of Illinois is not giving 66% to the funding of the public schools. And do you know who can fix that?
We can.
So we can, but eventually we have to get a certain legislator to fix it.
Right. but
And
we
you know, but we have to know, you're right. So the first step is we have to be educated, and that's what these workshops are about. But the people who can fix it are our state senators and our state representatives
say senator.
and state reps. So that's who you should blame. And do you know who your state senator is?
Remind me. Refresh my memory.
Do you know who your state rep is?
Refresh memory. Oh, is it
There we go. There we go. I heard he said
The
it.
football
What did he
player.
say? Nope. Well, so that's the state senator.
Thaddeus?
So Thaddeus isn't the
and,
football
and
player.
Miller. Is Miller one too?
He
that's
was.
your commissioner.
So,
Okay.
yeah, county commissioner.
Okay.
So the football player is right. His name is
Napoleon
Napoleon Harris.
Harris.
Yeah, there you go. He played for the Raiders.
Okay, Napoleon Harris. And who
So
else?
Napoleon is our state senator, and Thaddeus is our state rep, who's also the mayor of Calumet City. But that's another topic, another story. So Thaddeus Jones is our state rep, and Napoleon Harris is our state senator. And those are the two individuals who can actually do something about this. What we need is for them to change our funding formula. We need for them to say, instead of everybody paying these different percentages, we want for every community in the state of Illinois to pay a 10% property tax rate.
10%
That's
property.
it. 10%. We just need for every community in the whole state of Illinois to pay a 10% property tax rate. And when we go to a 10% property tax rate, right now, when we pay our taxes, we give the money to Cook County. And then Cook County sends the money for schools back to the local school districts. We don't want for them to do that anymore. We want for Cook County to collect the money and then send all of the money for public schools down to Springfield. And then Springfield will send the money for all of the schools based on how many students they have. So now, instead of our money paying for our local schools, our money will pay for all public schools. And because of that, every school will receive enough funding to fund their public schools, because the state of Illinois will be contributing 66% to the funding instead of the other way around.
Okay.
And why that's going to make such a big difference is because the community that paid the lowest tax rate for 2021 was Burr Ridge. So let's take a look at Burr Ridge's high school and find out what kind of funding they have. So anyone has the option to take a look at this. All this information that we're sharing is all public record. You'll notice that I'm going right to Google and just searching.
Right.
So let's take a look and see, according to the state of Illinois report card. So Burr Ridge High School. So I believe Burr Ridge is part of Hinsdale. So Burr Ridge High School is Hinsdale. So they're part of Hinsdale School District. So we have Hinsdale School District, Township High School District, they're 86. So let's take a look and see what kind of funding they have. So do you think that Hinsdale School District, do you think they're at 100% funding or less?
Less.
So you would think less. Okay, fair enough. So let's take a look and see how much money Hinsdale School District has in comparison to what their budget is. So according to this, Hinsdale was supposed to receive $56 million to fund their high schools. Hinsdale's high schools have $81 million.
Whoa.
They are 144%
over
to
100.
budget. Over 100. 144% to budget. And that's because guess where Hinsdale gets their funding from? From their local communities, because they're rich. So 92% of their funding comes from their local community. And that's because they have so much wealth. The median value of a home in Burr Ridge is close to $800,000. They have $1 million homes all throughout Burr Ridge. So now they only need to take 7% of the property taxes in terms of the rate in order to fund their high schools at a rate of 144%. That's the way our funding formula is set up. Wealthy communities get to keep all of the wealth local to fund their schools because all of the local dollars go to the local schools. But now let's take a look at a community such as South Holland. So our high school district, I think, is 205.
Correct, 205.
That's the 205. There we go. So do you think that our schools are funded at 100% or less or more, like Hinsdale?
Less.
Less. So what percentage do you think our schools are getting every year?
Probably, I would say 39%.
Ugh. If it was 39%, then we wouldn't even be able to pay
Oh,
the
okay.
teachers.
I would say 20%. Okay, 19.
Uh,
I would
so
20. Mhm.
so right now our schools are funded at a rate of 77% to budget.
Okay.
So our schools need, our high schools, that is, these numbers are what the State Board of Education says we need. So these aren't numbers that I'm making up. It's not numbers that the high schools make up. The State Board of Education for the state of Illinois has said Thornton Township's 3 high schools need $83 million to be adequate. That means to pay the teachers, to have the desks. That means to pay for the pensions, all of the expenses that go into funding the high schools. The State Board of Education has said Thornton high schools need 83 million. But because our township is as poor as we were only able to raise $63 million. So we are short by 23%. And Trustee Matz, I see your hand. What is that question?
So the question is, and since we don't get funded to the adequacy rate, and right now we have been hit, and I say we, School District 227 has been hit in our area with $100 million bond. So once we send our money to Springfield and Springfield send it back to the schools based on the students, and they get 10% of our property value, will that eliminate the levies, or will we still have to have a levy?
That's a great question. So the bond that you're referring to, which was a levy, so the bond was voted on by District 227 School Board. And you're very familiar with the school board and the president. The reason why school boards, and right now Homewood Flossmoor School District just voted on a bond for the reason why school districts have to do bonds or levies is because they're broke and there isn't enough money to make what are called capital improvements. Well, if we went to a 10% flat property tax rate for the entire state of Illinois, school districts wouldn't have to do bonds or levies anymore because the funds would already be there, not only for their adequacy budgets, but for what's considered to be capital improvements. So in those scenarios, they wouldn't need to do new bonds or new levies. Because if you have enough money, you don't need to go raise new money, which is what doing the bonds is. Now, in this case, because 227 has already done it, that would have to be factored into the tax rate for Rich Township. But the beauty of it is even though 100 million sounds like a lot to us, it would translate to less than a half a percentage point. So for the amount of time that it would take to pay off the remaining bond or levy, Rich Township would need to be at 10.5% as opposed to just 10%. But once the bond was paid off, then the 0.5% would fall off, and then they would go to paying 10% like all of the rest of the communities. So does that part make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Also, too, I was told that not only did they levy us for, the 100 million, but in order for them to get the 100 million, it's going to cost them 50 million on the money.
Well, yeah, that's because of interest. So whatever interest rate they work out, that's what it translates to. And again, all of these numbers to us as individuals, 150 million sounds like a ton. But when we're talking about the education budgets, and if we go to a 10% flat property tax, by simply paying 10.5% for 3 years' time in Ridge Township, that would take care of a $150 million bond. Like, that's how fast $150 million was made up. And we know that because right now we see how much is being paid in property taxes, and the adequacy budget is 52 million, and it's only making up $41 million. But if we go to 10% for everyone, remember in Burr Ridge, they're paying less than 10%, and they were able to raise $87 million for their high schools. So imagine if they paid another 3% for the entire community. Well, in theory, that would raise another 1/3 of the money. So that money alone would translate to, just for the high schools, not for all the rest of their school districts, but just for the high schools, to another $30 million in brand new revenue. But
Wow.
now, instead of that $30 million staying in Hinsdale, it would go throughout the state. And just like there's Hinsdale, there's also Glenview. There's also, who else was in the top three? So we had
Burr Ridge.
Hinsdale, Burr Ridge, and Lamont. So Burr Ridge and Hinsdale alone would easily likely generate $1 billion of new revenue. Just those two communities, by going up another 3% on their tax rates. That's it. And then throw in Lamont, just the top three, and we're probably talking 1.25 billion just from 3 communities. So how quickly are we going to be able to pay off a $150 million bond if we generate 1.25 billion in new revenue from 3 communities? And that's the beauty of this solution, is there's so much money that's available. We just have to make it where it's equitable for everyone. We're not asking Burr Ridge, Hinsdale, or Lamont to pay a higher percentage than we are. We're saying Burr Ridge, Hinsdale, and Lamont, you all pay 10%, just like us in Olympia Field, South Holland, and Park Forest will pay 10%. But instead of that money staying in your local community, now we're asking for you to fund public schools all across the state, just like we're going to fund public schools all across the state, because of the fact that the state constitution said that's how our system is supposed to work. And we know that it's supposed to work that way because that's how our income tax works. Right now, whether you live in Hinsdale, Burr Ridge, or Lamont, or Park Forest, Riverdale, or Phoenix, you pay a state income tax rate of 4.95%. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how little money you make. It doesn't matter where you live. If you live in Illinois, you pay an income tax rate at 4.95%. And when there was a potential to change that back in 2019, Illinoisans voted categorically and said, no, I don't want to make it where the more money I make, the higher percentage I pay in income taxes. Even though it was one of the worst decisions that Illinoisans could have made, that's the decision they made. So now, if that's how Illinoisans feel about income taxes, then we should definitely feel that same way about property taxes.
Yeah.
Because for the majority of us, we pay far more in property taxes than we do in income taxes.
Any
So I'm gonna
questions from my
pause.
guest?
If we have any questions.
So how do we get, okay, so need to contact those people, right?
How do we make the state pay its obligation first and foremost, its majority percentage, let's say 50.1%?
Great question. So the answer is we have to put pressure on our state senators and our state representatives. And the only way that we can do that is enough people have to know this is the problem and there's a potential viable solution.
Yes.
Because Someone was saying something?
I was just agreeing with you. Okay.
Okay. Because so everyone's aware, Trustee Match, Trustee Winston, and myself, we've been toiling away at this issue I've been toiling away at it for about 5 years consistently. Trustee Match and Trustee Winston joined the cause roughly about 2 years ago. And we've met with several elected officials. We've met with senators, we've met with representatives. And what they all tell us is that essentially they don't want to alienate their colleagues in communities like Burr Ridge, Hinsdale, and Lamont, because they have to go to work with them all day, every day. And we've explained, but you don't work for them. You might work with them, but not for them. You work for us. But the problem is that not enough of us understand that they are the ones who are right now the problem. So they have no fear of any repercussions. And that's the reason why they're not doing anything, because not enough of us know Napoleon Harris as well as Thaddeus Jones are the people who should be fixing this. And if they don't fix it, we're going to vote for someone else.
Okay.
So how we fix this is we need more people to know this is the problem and what's the solution. And how we believe, Trustee Match, Trustee Winston, myself, believe we get there is through these educational seminars. Because before you logged on, did you know what the problem was?
No.
And did you know who to blame?
No.
So you weren't going to vote for someone else who might be saying, I'm going to amend the law to change the public funding formula. And that's what our state reps and our state senators are banking on. The fact that the electorate aren't informed, and because they aren't informed, they're not going to vote for someone else. They're just going to keep on voting them in over and over again. And we need that to change. We need for enough people, what we believe to be about 10% of the electorate. If we can get 10% of the people who go to the polls and vote to know that this is the problem and that there's a solution, and vote for state reps and state senator candidates who are willing to enact this change, that will then give us the political power and political currency to force the hand of these representatives and senators. But what we need is help in getting people to attend these bi-weekly workshops. Every first and every third Wednesday, we are here. And it takes usually about 45 minutes to an hour for people to understand it and get on board. But we need help in getting more people to join us, so that way the next time we meet with Thaddeus and Napoleon and Debbie Myers Martin and Anthony DeLuca and James Joyce, we can say, hey, we have an entire army of voters who support this initiative. And if you don't support it, we're going to go and have them vote for whoever's running against you, who hopefully will support it. And then you're going to lose your position as senator and representative. And that's when they're going to say, okay, I have to support this legislation, and we can go from there.
Okay. Well, we're going to do it. We're gonna
Attorney Reed,
Yes, sir.
how are you?
I am excellent. How about yourself?
Okay, I'm doing better now. I finally figured out the mute button. But anyway,
Excellent.
first of all, I want to wish every one of you a happy new year and new possibilities.
Thank you.
And also, I'd like to thank you for that presentation that you made on estates, trust, and wills at the Rotary Club that day. That I can't wait for you to give that same presentation to Park Forest. In regards to, I think you pretty much answered the question regarding why so many representatives and senators are adverse to wanting to take this on. I get that in regards to their colleagues. I also am appreciative of the fact that you said that or delineated who are we to blame? Because a lot of times we're hearing blame the village,
Yep.
blame the school district, and blame the assessor's office. Now,
Yes.
one of the major things with the assessor's office, and I've met with with Kagi and a couple of his workers to try to explain the formula that they use, in assessing their property taxes. And it was very confusing to me. I don't have the knowledge that you have, but it was very confusing to me, largely because it seems like they couldn't even explain their own formula when we showed them different, well, look, in this case, you assess this property value here, but then it wasn't consistent with the way that they said they were going to do it. So I'm really, it's really interesting for you to hear, or for you to say, well, wait a minute, we shouldn't necessarily be even blaming the assessor's office, correct?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you bring up that point, because one of the things, and I'll be perfectly open and transparent with everyone, our firm, we do property tax appeals. So we go to the assessor's office and we say exactly what you just said, where, hey, you did this wrong, so you need to reduce the value of this property. And then that gives that one property owner tax relief for the next tax year. So we do that service. But when we do that, well, it doesn't fix anything. It only hurts everybody, because if that one homeowner is paying less in property taxes, does that mean that now everyone doesn't have to pay less, or does it mean everyone has to pay more?
And correct me if I'm incorrect, but if one property owner gets a tax exemption, veterans exemption, disabled, and their property goes down, well, then it doesn't fix the problem. It just goes over to the next taxpayer.
Exactly.
So your very neighbor, you could be paying, let's say, $1,000 in property tax. They're paying $8,000.
Exactly. And that's where the assessor's office comes in. So even if the assessor's office got every single property right, and it was exactly what the market rate is, the village still has a budget that it has to make. The schools still have a budget that they have to make. The libraries have a budget they have to make. The county has a budget they have to make. And if the assessor got every property right, it doesn't change the fact that Park Forest needs what it needs. Rich Township 227 needs what it needs. 162, 163 need what they need. So what that would mean is that now, let's say that they reduce the values of everyone's property taxes. That means that there's less money. Well, you know this better than most. If there's not enough money to cover the budget for Park Forest, what does Park Forest have to do the next year?
Well, we have to raise the tax levy.
You have to increase the levy.
Yes.
And that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a perpetual cycle, which is what Park Forest has demonstrated. When I first started doing this workshop, Park Forest's tax rate was 34%. Do you see what Park Forest's tax rate is now?
Yes. And
41.5%.
And there doesn't seem to be an end to that.
And there never will be, because what happens is that every year we replay the same cycle where more people are becoming seniors. Well, if more people are becoming seniors, that means more people qualify for the exemptions. More people qualify for the exemptions, less money is going in, less money goes in, Park Forest has to come back and raise the levy. And the reason why it is that it keeps happening is because you can only raise the levy statutorily by a certain percentage. So you guys can't just jump up and raise it to the point where the tax rate would be 50%, and now there's enough money. You have to keep doing it incrementally, which is why the number keeps moving 34%, 36%, 38%, now 41%. If we stay on this same path, it's not outside of the realm of possibility that in less than 10 years, Park Forest's tax rate will be above 50%.
Wow. And okay. And excuse me, everybody. I don't want to take a lot of time, but first of all, thank you for this valuable information, number one. And I promise you that I'm going to do the best that I possibly can to get more people involved in this seminar that you all do. Because, look, Park Forest is really going down a particular place that I don't even know how we would survive in the next 10 years, if not sooner, to be quite frank with you. But I have another question for you, Mario, or Attorney Reed. do you, did you get a call back from our village staff about you're possibly doing a seminar with our village?
No,
Not even on the estate trust and wills?
no, haven't heard from
Okay.
Park Forest. No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, we're gonna take care of that. Thank you.
I had a question
Yes, sir.
in a different vein. You mentioned that a proposal was mentioned in 2019. Has anything been done to revive that proposal?
So there was a constitutional amendment which was proposed in 2019. It was on the ballot in November of 2019, and it was called the fair tax. You may remember some of the advertising that was done for it. J.B. Pritzker came on and said we should have a fair tax. But then shortly before it was election time, there was this pact that was created where they said, hey, the fair tax is going to raise your taxes on small businesses and it's going to run them out of business. It was a proposal to go to a graduated income tax. So Illinois is the only state in the Midwest where we have a flat income tax. So the proposal was to make it where the more money you make, if you make over $250,000, then you would pay a higher percentage than 4.95%. And it would keep going up the more money that you make, which is exactly what our federal income tax is. We have the marginal tax rates. More money you make, the higher percentage you pay. The state of Illinois asked the question on the ballot, do you want to essentially go to that system? And because the special interest group vis-a-vis wealthy people said, I don't want to pay more in income taxes, they created a pact that then put on these smear commercials to say, don't support this, not because it's going to save us rich people money, but they use small businesses because they thought that it would resonate better with voters, and it worked. So that was the proposal.
So
And
if
go
they
ahead.
revive that and try to attack it with the information that we have, maybe it could help the situation as far, because
only if enough people understand the dynamics of it. Because if you don't understand the dynamics of it, and someone came to you before tonight's workshop and said, hey, are you in favor of going to a flat property tax of 10%? Without any information, what would your answer have been?
no, I need more information, and I really don't want the increase, period.
Exactly. And that's the mentality. People think if it has anything to do with tax, inherently they say no. But in your case, as a resident of South Holland, it would be essentially a 50% reduction.
Okay.
So, right, exactly. So you're in favor of that, right?
And so people will say we're coming with a proposal just to lower our taxes.
Exactly. But we're not lowering everybody's taxes, because if you live in Burr Ridge, I'm increasing your tax rate from 7.2% to 10%. Are people in Burr Ridge going to support this?
No.
Exactly. If you are a resident of Hinsdale, I'm raising your tax rate from 10% from 7.5% to 10%. Are people in Hinsdale going to support this?
No.
In Lamont, I'm raising your tax rate from 7.8 to 10%. Are they going to support it?
No,
No.
no.
Exactly. But if you're in Park Forest, are you going to support going from 41% to 10%?
Yes.
You're darn right.
Riverdale, are you going to go from 31% to 10%?
Absolutely. Yes.
Phoenix, are you going to support it going from 29% to 10%?
Yes.
And South Holland, are you going to support it going from 19% to 10%?
Absolutely.
And there are, out of 145 municipalities in Cook County, 89 of us pay a tax rate above 10%. So well above 50% of us are paying more than 10%. So approximately 66% of us are going to get tax relief. But the problem is that it takes some time to understand all of this. So you all have been on the call now for 55 minutes and you get it, right?
Yeah, yes, we get it, yeah.
Right. But it took roughly a half an hour to 45 minutes to get it. If somebody comes to you and says, do you support going to a 10% property tax, and you've never heard any of this information, most people's natural response is going to be no, even though it would be to their benefit. But because people are against all taxes, even when it's a tax that will benefit them, their natural inclination is to say no. And that's why we need to educate in advance, because we learned when you don't educate the people who are voting, they're going to just say no. And we saw it in 2019. And that's why we do these workshops, because we're hoping. So I like to say that we're modeling ourselves after MADD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Back in the 90s, when I was still attending high school at Rich East, I would always pick up the Star newspaper and see the blotter, the police blotter, and they would have like 10 and 15 people who got pulled over for DUIs. And I just thought it was a way of life. I just thought that DUIs happen and it just is what it is. Well, sure enough, enough mothers against drunk driving got together, and then they created a special interest group, MADD. And the reason why there were so many drunk driving individuals is because if you got a drunk driving, it was just a slap on the wrist. So there were no laws that really prohibited it. So when you don't have laws against it and they don't have any teeth to it, people do it. Well, the Mothers Against Drunk Driving understood that, and they created the special interest group. They marched on Springfield. And then now, over a decade later, the state of Illinois has some of the strictest drunk driving laws in the whole country. And now we have the fewest drunk driving, homicides, as well as accidents. And it was because the Mothers Against Drunk Driving got together and they organized, and they went out and they lobbied Springfield and said, if you don't support these initiatives to change the law, we're going to vote for somebody who will, and you'll be out. But it was because they were easily able to get people to support their initiative. Who isn't behind not having their sons and daughters killed? So it was a very easy and quick thing to understand. When it comes to property taxes, it's not as easy and quick to understand. So it takes a little while longer. And that's why we need people to show up so we can help explain it to them. And once you leave, like yourself, are you in support of a 10% flat tax for everybody?
Yes.
Exactly. At the end of all of these workshops, everybody who's attended and leaves is always in favor of it. It's just that we need more people so we can convince them. And then the next time that we meet with Representative DeLuca, Representative Myers, Representative Jones, State Senator Harris, State Senator Evans, we can say, look, we have all these people who support the 10% flat tax initiative. And if you're not going to support it as well, we'll find somebody else who will. And then we'll be able to actually deliver on our word when the election comes around. And then we can get candidates who believe in helping our communities.
Yes, that's right.
So Trustee Winston, do we have any questions from our viewers on YouTube and Facebook?
Why is the state?
He must have stepped away because he's not answering.
Okay, I think someone else had.
Trustee Metz, I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I don't know any other way to ask this question except to say it this way. Are there any predominantly white communities that have such a high tax rate in their communities, the way that we do in our predominantly Black communities?
So that's a fair question. And the answer is no. There are no predominantly white communities that have a tax rate above 10%.
Okay, so that looks like, I don't know if that's not,
Racism and a class action.
if that's not systematic segregation, I don't know what that is. And
So this always comes up, and what people always say is well, we should just get all of our communities together and file a class action lawsuit on the basis of discrimination, on the basis of race and nationality. However, the answer to that question and statement is no, because is there anything that prohibits any one of us on the calls from moving to Hinsdale?
oh, got you. Yeah.
Is there anything
Wow.
that prohibits us from moving to Burr Ridge?
Money.
Wow.
So no, because so every community by law is supposed to have some affordable housing. So Trustee Matz, if you wanted to give up that beautiful baronial estate you have and move into a 1-bedroom condo in Burr Ridge for the same amount, you could do so.
I'm a
There's
member.
nothing. Yeah, I'm sure. There's nothing stopping you from being in that studio apartment in Burr Ridge. So it's not discrimination. And that's the part which for a lot of people, it's tough to understand, because just like you mentioned, Trustee Woods, well, if there are no white communities paying above 10% and there are all these Black and brown communities above, then it must be based on something that relates to our race, ethnicity, or creed. But nothing stops us from moving to Burr Ridge. Nothing stops us from moving to Hinsdale, other than the socio aspect where I don't want to live in Hinsdale. I don't want to live in Burr Ridge. I want to live in communities that are diverse and have people who look like me. And when people walk into my office and see this person, they're not taken aback and then leave because I've got Huey P. Newton on the walls of my office. But that's a personal choice. And because that's a personal choice, if I tried to sue on the basis of discrimination, the judge would quickly say, well, why don't you just move to Hinsdale? And I wouldn't be able to say it's because I'm being discriminated against.
Wow.
Who's got their hand up?
Colleen's iPhone does.
Oh, I wanted to ask, why don't we really hit the state for its obligation of 50%? Why don't we hammer at that too?
Because the state isn't like, it's not like a giant living in the hill. The state is us. So in order for us to hit the state's going to turn around and say, okay, no problem, but where's the money going to come from? And that's the reason why we already did that work for them, of saying, hey, state, you have the money, you just have to collect it from everybody in the state equally. And that's what this proposal is about. It's saying, state, you need to contribute more, to which the state legislature is going to say, okay, where do we get the money from? We've already done the work of telling them where they get the money from. And we've said, make everyone's property tax rate 10%. So it's equal, it's equitable, and it's fair. And then instead of the money staying local, send the money to the state, and the state sends the money to every public school throughout the state of Illinois, equally and proportionally based on the number of students, based on the per pupil spending amount set by the State Board of Education.
So this is our dilemma. Our dilemma is we're trying to get people educated enough that they can withstand any pushback. We've already have precedent when we tried to have the flat tax go into the graduated tax. And those who had means and money were able to go on the news, get ads, and really bombard us with false pretense that we're going to be at $250,000 eventually. So we want to stay on a flat tax. We don't want to go to a graduated tax. And we bought it, line and sinker, we bought it. And so that's the same with this. We got over 140 municipalities, right? And about 43 of them are rich and they're paying less than we are. And so those 43, if they get wind of what we're doing, they're going to slap us down because they have the money to bombard us with all the ads doing Jedi mind tricks on us that we are, we shouldn't even be going after their money because that's welfare. You just need to stand on your own, while they're over there having, the best technology ever. Their high schools, their grammar schools look like college campuses. And we're over here thirsty for water and we can't even drink at the trough because we don't even have a trough. So it's so vital that we get the word out. I've invited Pastor Singleton on here because he commands a large audience, and just allowing us to speak to that audience speaks volumes. If we can just get more eyeballs in front of the computer so that Attorney Reed can really break it down to you. I mean, like he said, in 40 minutes, you'll get it. You'll get it. But if you don't know, and somebody's saying, oh, we want to make our property taxes 10%. I mean, we're flipping our wig. Like, on top of the 67 I'm already paying, or on top of the 45 I'm already, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. That's it in a
All right.
nutshell.
So thank you, Trustee Matson. I see 3 hands up. So Trustee Matson, your hand is still up. And then Trustee
Okay.
Woods and Colleen's iPhone, your hands are up. So Trustee Woods, we'll go to you.
Yes, thank you. I've been hearing about how how the assessor assesses its property. So there's the assessed property value, but then now there's this new term called the replacement value. And there seems to be this push to determine how taxes ought to be assessed by virtue of the replacement value instead of the way that they're doing it. Does that make any sense?
It does. So
Okay.
It makes perfect sense to me. The only thing is that it would take me a long time to be able to help yourself as well as everyone understand that. And
Okay.
I'm more than happy to set up a time where we can speak offline and go through that. But I don't
you.
want for you to take the bait that kind of exists. It doesn't matter what the assessor does. Whether
Okay.
the assessor accurately assesses your property or inaccurately assesses your property, Park Forest is always going to have the highest property tax rate. And the reason why is because Park Forest doesn't have enough money. That's the moral of the story. Park Forest, do you know what the median property value is in Park Forest?
I believe it's what, 69,000?
Exactly. That's exactly it. That is exactly the number. $69,000. Well, we were just looking at how much money Rich Township needed, and it was, I believe, $81 million. How much money of $69,000 what percentage do you have to take to be able to come up with $81 million?
Wow.
Essentially, you have to tax it the whole value of what it's worth. In contrast, do you know what the median property value is of a home in Burr Ridge?
No.
It's $880,000.
Wow.
What percentage of an $880,000 home do you have to take to come up with $110 million? Well, the answer is a much smaller percentage, because the home is worth more than 10 times what the Park Forest home is. And that's the reason why Hinsdale can tax their residents 6% and still fund their schools at 144%, whereas Park Forest is taxing their residents at 42%, and our schools are still funded at a rate of just 77%. We don't have enough money to fund our public schools. And the state framers knew that. When they did the Constitution, they knew that was the case, which is why they said, don't pay for your schools at a local level, pay for it at a state level, because if you put all of the state's money together, we can pay for public schools. The problem is, if you live in Hinsdale, do you like our current system, or are you going to like the new system?
The current system.
The current system. If you live in Burr Ridge, do you like the current system, or are you going to like the new system?
Current system.
And if you live in Hinsdale and you live in Burr Ridge and someone proposes this for the people to vote for, what are you going to do to prevent it from happening?
Well, you're going to go against the ones who are supporting the new system.
You're going to do everything possible. You're going to do everything in your power to prevent this from coming into fruition.
Yeah.
Because imagine if somebody said to you, hey, I'm going to increase your taxes by 33%, and the money that I increase it is going to go to schools in Hinsdale. Are you going to support that?
Wow. Mm-mm-mm.
But that's what it is that we're proposing. And we make no qualms about it. I haven't came on here and lied to you and told you everybody's going to win, because that would be a lie. And I'm not in the lying business. Even though some people think us attorneys are, I'm not.
What do you think about the idea of, let's say, for instance, the municipalities in the Southland east of 57 coming together and doing a class action lawsuit?
We lose. We're going to lose a class action lawsuit.
I'm sorry,
not largely, because we don't have the necessary standing. We are not being discriminated against on the basis of any protected class. It is okay to set up a system that systemically discriminates against poor people, because being poor is not a protected class in the United States of America. It just so happens that typically Black and brown people are poor. So we're being discriminated against on the basis of essentially our economic status, but that's not protected. It's okay to discriminate against poor people, but it's up to us as poor people to say, we don't like this system, and we're going to bind together, and politically, we're going to impose our will. And that's what this is all about. This is about education for purposes of creating political power. And once we have political power, then we can take back our true rights.
But do you think that even with the lawsuit slash press conference to bring broader attention to what's going on, even let's say it doesn't even make it to the courts, but I don't hear this come outside of you guys, and thank God for you guys. Outside of you guys, I don't hear the urgency of it. It's not talked about, to be quite frank with you. I mean, of course they say, oh, they're raising too much of my taxes. And then of course they're blaming the village or the Cook County Assessor's Office or even the school districts. But it never gets to that point of urgency where it's like, hey man, hey y'all, we need to do a press conference just to bring attention to it.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is essentially a political stunt in order to garner attention. And if I was Al Sharpton, or if I was Jesse Jackson in his heyday, yeah, that may be someone. I'm not cut from that cloth where I want to do something just for the publicity that comes from it. In my opinion, that's part of why we're in this predicament, is because people are so easy and quick to look at the political stunt and not willing to sit down and take 45 minutes to an hour to learn about what the truth is. Now, if you want to get together with some trustees and mayors that you know, and you guys want to hold a press conference and you like for me to show up and explain this aspect, I'm happy to do so. But I'm not interested in doing a political stunt to call attention to something that, in my opinion, all of us benefit from. Everybody in the South suburbs is going to see their property taxes cut by at least 25%. In Park Forest, let's say that your tax bill is $6,000. If we go to a 10% flat tax, your tax bill will go to $1,500. What are you going to do with that $4,500?
Spend it.
And where are you going to spend it? Or where are you going to want to spend it?
Then trendy.
You're going to want to spend it in Park Forest.
Theater 47.
Exactly. And now, all of these businesses which are struggling in order to stay in business because there's not enough disposable income in our communities, well, guess what? everybody in Park Forest just got a 66% raise.
Right.
And then they're going to go and invest it in their community. And now Olive Garden is going to say, oh, Park Forest has got all that new money. Maybe we need to go put an Olive Garden in the downtown center. And now that only helps because now there's more commercial tax revenue. And now that lessens how much it is that has to be paid by the property taxpayers. So,
Attorney Reed,
yes.
let me just add to that question that Trustee Woods had about why isn't anybody else talking about it? Because this is a hot pocket. And you have to have a spine and a backbone in order to carry this water to the floor of the House or to the Senate. And no one wants to do this without having a whole army of people behind them to hold them up. And this is why we're here, is to create that army so that the two people, we need one in the House so they can pass it over to the Senate and so it can get passed, so that when they do have enough nerve to put it on the floor saying, we want this to happen because we got 500,000 people behind us saying this is what they want, they won't get any pushback. But with them carrying this bucket of water by themselves, they're not going to be able to put themselves out, their flames out when their colleagues come for them, because they got other people saying they don't want this. And then they're going to have people running against them to unseat them. But if we got enough people saying, don't worry about the people that's going to run against you, we're going to still vote you back in. So it's a whole cyclical cycle of, and I'm not going to use my good word on this camera tonight, but you know what I mean. It starts with an F and it ends with a Y. So, so until we get people who want to be progressive and actually want to do right by the constituents that vote them in, we're going to be on this for a minute. We know this isn't a quick fix because we got to gather up the people in order to back this. So we're dedicated to this for the long haul. And everybody that's on this call, if you can have people at our next meeting, which is the third Wednesday of this month at 7:00, the more momentum that we get and the more eyeballs we get on the camera here, we can give them this message and then they can help us help them. And with that being said, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. It's 8:17. If anybody had any other questions, matter of fact, if you have a question, we're going to even gift you all tonight. It's the first of the year. Happy New Year, everybody. If you got a question outside of this for Attorney Reed, I'm pretty sure he would honor that question with an answer if it's within his wheelhouse before we sign off.
You have a question?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
How much money would the South Suburb need in order to fund the educational system that's lacking right now? How much?
So my guess and ballparking it would be probably $1.5 billion.
1.5 billion. Is that on an annual basis? That's
Yes.
an annual basis.
Yes.
Okay. I had another question, Attorney Reed.
Yes, sir.
This has come out a number of times. We said we set up the lottery to help fund education. How much money is the lottery giving to education?
So the exact percentage, I would need to go and take a look, but you're roughly talking about between 10 and 12%. And that's part of that state money. So I want everybody to be clear that every single school receives a different percentage in money from the state. So remember when I gave you that number of 26% that the state is contributing? Well, that's an average. For District 205, it might be more. For District 227, it might be less. So when we go and we look at the finances of each and every district, it gives us the breakdown of what the revenue percentages are, where the money's coming from. So in the case of District 227, which I'm an alum of, I graduated from Rich East before it was closed. The state of Illinois is only contributing 19.26 or 19.2%. So Rich Township isn't even getting the 26% that the state on average is giving. So because of that, The state gives 19.2%. Some of that 19.2 comes from the state lottery. But in terms of an average overall, of the 26% that the state gives on average to all schools, roughly 10 to 12% of it comes from the lottery.
Attorney Reed.
Sure.
And thank you for that information. I would like you to know that much of what you and Adam and Cassandra has been doing, it has been a part of the conversation, albeit it's been not as necessarily public, but there has been an undercurrent of that conversation. And I want you guys to know that your efforts aren't being fallen on deaf ears. Even so much to the point that my village, we actually had a workshop, not through you, of course, but through our economic development group, where we were talking about this same issue. And one of the things was, hey, we need to sound the alarm on this. And how do you do that? You've answered a lot of that question. And by the way, it wasn't, my intent wasn't that it be a political stunt, and it would possibly be interpreted as that, but at least from a level of sounding the alarm. And so what I'll try to do is sound the alarm to the effect of being a part of this kind of workshop, or even have you be a part of our village with a town hall meeting or whatever the case may be. So that's my commitment. I'm going to try to do that. And again, not from a political stunt move, because we've had too much of that. So it wouldn't be that, but it would be on an educational level.
And I don't want you to think that I was referring to it in terms of getting people together and kind of sound alarm. But so as an attorney, I know that there's no basis for a lawsuit. If we go and do a lawsuit for the sole purpose of essentially being able to get coverage, that's the part that I was referring to as a political stunt.
Oh, I got you.
But if you want to get people together and then we tell them, hey, here's a problem, we have a solution, that's exactly what we're doing. And I'll do every press conference from now until the cows come home with that. It was the fact of saying, let's do a class action lawsuit, understanding that we're not going to win, but for the purpose, that was the part I was referring to.
I understand. Got you.
Yeah, so just that aspect of it. So that's what I mean. But if you want to get together and if you can coordinate, so I've said this to every elected official, every person. So as an elected official, you get to send out mailers. I'm happy. I'll pay the money out of my pocket for you to send a mailer to every person in Park Forest saying that we're going to have a town hall to discuss property taxes and a potential solution. And you can say it's sponsored by Trustee Joe Woods. I don't care if my face or my name shows up anyway. I'll pay for it and I'll facilitate it. I just want to help us because I grew up in the Chinese House of Park Forest. My daughter is growing up in a house in Lansing. I don't want for her to say I got to move away to Indiana or to Naperville or to Hinsdale because she can't afford to live here and the schools for her children to go to aren't what they should be.
Sure. And thank you for that. Thank you for that.
No problem. So at this point, so I said I was going to give it till 8:30. So we're at 8:24 and I'll stay true to my word. I'll stick around to 8:30 and answer any question and every question you have. But what our hope is with this and what we leave with, a lot of times.
Have a good night, guys.
You too, Trustee Winston. So a lot of people come on the call and say, well, is there a petition we can sign? And they think that it's kind of, well, let me just sign a petition and then that'd be the end of it. It's not that kind of scenario. It's a case where we need people to show up. And when you show up, we can give you the information, but we need for you to bring a friend and then 2 friends and then 3 friends. And once we get to that point where everybody's vested enough, where they're bringing 2 and 3 and 4 people, then the next time that we go to Thaddeus or Napoleon and say, hey, we're having our flat tax workshop on next 3rd Wednesday, and there's going to be 800 people, Well, Thaddeus is going to say, well, I want to get in front of those 800 people just to show them that I'm about the cause. And now we start to see the traction and the movement that we need. But right now, we just don't have the numbers. So when I go and sit down with Rep. DeLuca and he says there are going to be winners and losers, and I can't be a loser, I can't say to him, well, if you don't support this, you'll be a loser, because there's 500,000 people who will vote against you. And that's what we have to build to. And that's what the work is. And it's not, there is no quick fix. There's no magic powder that we can sprinkle on it. We need people to care enough to show up and learn about it. And once they learn, then we're on and running.
Well said. Well said.
So any other questions for myself? For anyone, for Trustee Matz or anyone who's a part of it?
Anybody want to know anything about Living Trust? Anybody needs to know any information about that? I got my life in order last year, so I can crip walk into 2023 with no problems.
West Side.
Other than that, I thank everybody for coming out tonight. This has been a passion of mine. When I ran for mayor in 21, every door I knocked on, they wanted to know, what can we do? What can I do about the property tax? And when Attorney Reed called me up and said, hey, I got a solution to that problem, it was just an a light bulb moment where I just had to take advantage of that and just really start educating the people that it's not the municipality. It's not that. And here's the true solution to the problem. So with that being said, thank you everyone for coming out. We just need more people. We're here every first and third Wednesday of the month at 7 o'clock. Whether it's just us on the line or it's 50 people on the line, we will always be here, because this is definitely something that can alleviate us and give us all a raise. We need it. 2023. I know I need some new stilettos. So there we go.
We would like to thank you for inviting us tonight. And we know that education is the key. So we are going to invite others.
Thank
you.
Thank
Same
you
here.
tonight.
All right. Good night, everyone.
We strive to make
Happy New Year, guys. Good night, everyone.
It's the first and third Wednesday. So it's very easy. First and third Wednesday. So you don't have to worry about what date it is, none of that. Every first and every third Wednesday, we want to make it as easy for people to be able to sign and attend.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Hey,
My
keep
pleasure.
up the good work, Mario.
Thank you. Talk
Excellent.
soon.
All right, brother.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.